Our journey through the human condition has thus far explored the complexities of empathy and its crucial role in navigating interpersonal and societal relationships. However, the foundation of our interactions, our understanding of the world, and our capacity for empathy itself rests upon the bedrock of knowledge. This leads us to the fascinating and often challenging field of epistemology, the study of knowledge. Epistemology delves into the very nature of knowledge, asking fundamental questions about how we acquire it, what constitutes justified belief, and the limits of our understanding. One of the most enduring debates in epistemology centers around the contrasting approaches of rationalism and empiricism. Rationalists, thinkers such as Plato and René Descartes, emphasize the role of reason and innate ideas in the acquisition of knowledge. They believe that certain fundamental truths are accessible through pure reason, independent of sensory experience. Descartes famously used deductive reasoning to establish the existence of his own mind. Cogito, ergo sum, I think, therefore I am, arguing that this foundational truth could not be doubted, even if the reality of the external world might be illusory. Similarly, Plato's theory of forms posited the existence of perfect abstract ideals, like justice or beauty, that are accessible through reason alone, rather than through observation of the imperfect physical world. Rationalists see knowledge as a product of logical deduction and analysis, a process of deriving conclusions from self-evident premises. In contrast, empiricists, including John Locke, George Berkeley, and David Hume, maintain that all knowledge ultimately originates from sensory experience. They emphasize the role of observation, experimentation, and inductive reasoning in building our understanding of the world. Locke's concept of the tabula rasa, the blank slate, suggests that we are born without innate ideas, and all our knowledge is acquired through interaction with our environment. Empiricists believe that knowledge is constructed through the careful accumulation of sensory data and the identification of patterns and regularities in this data. They highlight the importance of empirical evidence in validating claims and emphasize the limitations of pure reason, suggesting that it can lead to error if not grounded in observable reality. The scientific method, with its emphasis on observation, experimentation, and falsification, is a prime example of the empirical approach. However, the dichotomy between rationalism and empiricism is not as absolute as it might initially seem. Many contemporary epistemologists recognize the limitations of each approach in isolation. They argue that knowledge acquisition is a more complex process that involves both rational and empirical elements. For instance, scientific inquiry typically involves both deductive reasoning, formulating hypotheses, and inductive reasoning, testing those hypotheses through observation and experimentation. The interpretation of empirical data itself often relies on theoretical frameworks and background knowledge, which may be influenced by rational principles. Beyond rationalism and empiricism, other significant epistemological perspectives have emerged. Constructivism, for example, emphasizes the role of social interaction and cultural context in shaping our knowledge. Constructivists argue that knowledge is not simply a reflection of an objective reality, but rather a socially constructed product. Our understanding of the world is shaped by our interactions with others, our cultural beliefs, and the language we use. This perspective has profound implications for our understanding of truth and objectivity, suggesting that there may not be a single, universally valid account of reality. Different cultural groups may develop different, yet equally valid, understandings of the world based on their shared experiences and interpretations. Pragmatism, another influential epistemological perspective, focuses on the practical consequences of our beliefs. Pragmatists, such as William James and John Dewey, argue that the truth of a belief is determined by its usefulness in guiding our actions and solving problems. They emphasize the importance of experimentation and feedback in refining our beliefs and adapting them to changing circumstances. This approach highlights the importance of practicality and relevance in assessing the validity of knowledge claims. A belief is considered true to the extent that it helps us navigate the world effectively and achieve our goals. Feminist epistemology offers a critical perspective on traditional epistemological frameworks, arguing that they have often been shaped by patriarchal biases and assumptions. Feminist epistemologists highlight the importance of considering the perspectives of marginalized groups and challenging dominant narratives. They often emphasize the role of emotion, experience, and social context in shaping knowledge, contrasting this with the more traditional emphasis on reason and objectivity. Feminist epistemology also calls for greater attention to power dynamics in the production and dissemination of knowledge, acknowledging that the social location of knowers affects their ability to access and produce knowledge. The exploration of these different epistemological perspectives highlights the inherent complexities involved in the pursuit of truth and knowledge. There is no single, universally accepted answer to the question of how we know what we know. Each epistemological approach offers valuable insights, highlighting different aspects of the knowledge acquisition process and the limitations of our understanding. Recognizing the diverse perspectives and ongoing debates within epistemology fosters a more nuanced and critical approach to our own beliefs and the claims of others. Ultimately, understanding epistemology helps us to better evaluate information, challenge assumptions, and engage in more thoughtful and informed decision-making. It underscores the importance of continuous learning, self-reflection, and a willingness to grapple with the inherent uncertainties that accompany the pursuit of truth and knowledge. This ongoing critical examination of how we arrive at our understanding of reality is essential not just for intellectual growth, but also for navigating the complexities of the human experience with greater clarity and understanding. The quest for knowledge is, in essence, a lifelong journey, and understanding the various pathways available to us is crucial for progressing on this path with greater confidence and self-awareness. Our exploration of epistemology has thus far illuminated the diverse and often conflicting perspectives on how we acquire knowledge. However, even the most rigorous methods of inquiry, whether rationalist, empiricist, constructivist, or pragmatist, confront inherent limitations. The pursuit of absolute, undeniable truth remains an elusive goal, and recognizing these inherent boundaries is paramount to fostering intellectual humility and fostering a more nuanced understanding of the world. One crucial limit lies in the inherent subjectivity of human perception. Our senses, the primary conduits of empirical knowledge, are fallible and inherently selective. We do not passively receive sensory input. Rather, we actively interpret it, filtering and shaping it through our existing beliefs, expectations, and biases. Consider, for example, the phenomenon of optical illusions. These demonstrate how easily our perception can be manipulated, highlighting the fact that what we see is not necessarily a direct reflection of objective reality. Our interpretation of sensory information is heavily influenced by our cognitive frameworks, leading to individual variations in how we experience and understand the world. Furthermore, our cognitive capacities themselves impose limitations on our understanding. Our brains are finite, processing information through a complex web of interconnected neurons. This inherent architecture shapes our thought processes, influencing our ability to grasp complex concepts and recognize patterns. Cognitive biases, systematic errors in thinking, further complicate the picture, leading us to draw flawed conclusions or cling to beliefs despite evidence to the contrary. Confirmation bias, for instance, leads us to favor information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs, while neglecting contradictory evidence. The availability heuristic causes us to overestimate the likelihood of events that are easily recalled, even if those events are statistically rare. These cognitive biases affect not just our everyday judgments, but also our scientific inquiries, demonstrating the importance of rigorous methodology and critical self-reflection. The problem of induction further complicates our pursuit of knowledge. Inductive reasoning involves drawing general conclusions from specific observations. While this is a fundamental aspect of scientific inquiry, it is inherently uncertain. No matter how many observations we make that support a particular generalization, we can never be absolutely certain that future observations will align with our expectation. This is the core of Hume's problem of induction. Simply put, even overwhelming evidence for a pattern does not guarantee that this pattern will continue indefinitely. The sun has risen every day of our lives, yet there's no logical guarantee that it will rise tomorrow. This inherent uncertainty in inductive reasoning underscores the limits of empirical knowledge, highlighting the possibility of surprises and unexpected deviations from established patterns. Beyond individual limitations, societal and cultural factors also constrain our understanding. The language we use, the cultural narratives we inherit, and the social structures we inhabit all shape our perception of reality. Constructivist epistemology emphasizes the social construction of knowledge, highlighting the fact that our understanding is not simply a reflection of an objective world, but a product of our social interactions and cultural frameworks. Different cultures may have different ways of understanding the world, not necessarily conflicting, but varying approaches reflecting distinct priorities and experiences. This diverse range of perspectives reveals the limitations of seeking a single, universally valid truth. Furthermore, the very act of seeking knowledge can alter the object of our inquiry. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle in quantum physics illustrates this phenomenon dramatically. The act of observing a quantum system inevitably affects its state, demonstrating that the observer is not a passive recipient of information, but an active participant in shaping the observed reality. While this principle applies to the quantum realm, it holds a metaphorical relevance for our understanding of the social world as well. The act of studying a social group, for instance, can influence the behavior of its members, impacting the data we collect and potentially leading to bias. The limitations of human knowledge also extend to ethical considerations. The pursuit of knowledge can have unforeseen consequences, some of which may be ethically problematic. Scientific advancements, for instance, have brought about both enormous benefits and significant risks. Nuclear technology, genetic engineering, and artificial intelligence all represent powerful tools that could be used for constructive or destructive purposes. The ethical implications of scientific discoveries demand careful consideration, highlighting the social responsibilities that accompany the quest for knowledge. Moreover, the pursuit of knowledge is often intertwined with power dynamics. The control of information, the distribution of resources, and the framing of narratives all affect who gets to participate in the knowledge creation process and whose voices are amplified. Acknowledging these limitations is not a call for cynicism or despair. Rather, it is an invitation to cultivate intellectual humility and engage in knowledge-seeking endeavors with greater awareness and critical self-reflection. Recognizing that our understanding is always partial, incomplete, and subject to revision promotes a more nuanced approach to decision-making, problem-solving, and social interaction. It fosters a spirit of open-mindedness, a willingness to consider alternative perspectives, and a commitment to ongoing learning. The pursuit of truth and knowledge is not a destination but a lifelong journey, marked by moments of discovery, but also by the recognition that our understanding will always remain incomplete. Embracing uncertainty and doubt, therefore, becomes not a weakness, but a strength, fostering intellectual integrity and empowering us to engage with the world in a more informed, ethical, and compassionate way. The very act of acknowledging these limitations is a crucial step in our ongoing quest for a deeper, more nuanced comprehension of ourselves and the world we inhabit. The capacity to appreciate the boundaries of our understanding allows for a more profound engagement with the world, fostering humility, empathy, and a more productive pursuit of knowledge. This acknowledgement encourages us to value both the known and the unknown, fostering curiosity and inspiring further exploration of the vast and often enigmatic universe of human experience. Ultimately, the recognition of the limits of human knowledge fosters a sense of wonder and respect for the mysteries that still lie ahead, fueling our continued quest for understanding. Having established the inherent limitations of human knowledge acquisition, we now turn to the crucial skill of critical thinking, the process of actively and skillfully conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, or evaluating information gathered from or generated by observation, experience, reflection, reasoning, or communication, as a guide to belief and action. Critical thinking is not merely about accumulating facts. It is about developing the intellectual tools to navigate the complex and often contradictory information landscape we inhabit. In essence, it's about discerning truth from falsehood, evidence from anecdote, and reasoned argument from emotional appeal. This involves a healthy dose of skepticism, a willingness to question assumptions, and a commitment to rigorous evaluation. One of the cornerstones of critical thinking is the identification of biases. These are systematic errors in thinking that can distort our perception of reality and lead us to flawed conclusions. Confirmation bias, as previously mentioned, is a prime example, causing us to favor information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs while ignoring contradictory evidence. This bias is pervasive, influencing our decisions in areas ranging from personal relationships to political affiliations. For instance, a person who believes in the effectiveness of a particular dietary supplement might selectively remember instances where they felt healthier after taking it while disregarding instances where they did not. This selective memory reinforces their belief, despite the lack of robust scientific evidence. Another significant bias is the availability heuristic, which leads us to overestimate the likelihood of events that are easily recalled, often due to their vividness or recent occurrence. Dramatic news stories, for example, can skew our perception of risk. We might overestimate the likelihood of plane crashes because they are vividly reported in the media, even though statistically, air travel is incredibly safe. Similarly, the anchoring bias makes us overly reliant on the first piece of information we receive, even if that information is irrelevant or misleading. Negotiations often demonstrate this, where the initial offer sets a benchmark that unduly influences the subsequent bargaining process. Beyond cognitive biases, we must also be vigilant against logical fallacies, errors in reasoning that undermine the validity of an argument. One common fallacy is the ad hominem attack, which involves attacking the person making the argument rather than addressing the argument itself. This distracts from the actual issue and is a classic tactic to avoid engaging with valid criticism. Another is the straw man fallacy, where someone misrepresents their opponent's position to make it easier to attack. Instead of directly addressing the actual argument, they create a weaker, more easily refuted version. Equally prevalent is the appeal to authority fallacy, where someone claims that something is true simply because an authority figure says so, without providing further evidence. While experts' opinions can be valuable, it's crucial to evaluate the evidence supporting their claims. The proliferation of misinformation and disinformation in the digital age poses a particularly significant challenge to critical thinking. The ease with which false or misleading information can be spread online, coupled with the inherent biases of algorithms and social media platforms, creates a breeding ground for unsubstantiated claims and conspiracy theories. Recognizing the sources of information is crucial in assessing its credibility. Is the source known for its accuracy and objectivity, or does it have a clear agenda or bias? Examining the evidence presented is also essential. Does the information align with established facts and scientific consensus, or does it rely on anecdotal evidence, conjecture, or appeals to emotion? Developing robust critical thinking skills requires consistent practice and self-reflection. It's essential to cultivate a mindset of intellectual humility, acknowledging that we may be wrong and that our beliefs are subject to revision in light of new evidence. This entails questioning our own assumptions and biases, and actively seeking out diverse perspectives. Furthermore, engaging in rigorous fact-checking, carefully evaluating the evidence presented, and scrutinizing the reasoning employed are crucial steps in evaluating the validity of claims. We must learn to differentiate between correlation and causation. Just because two events occur together doesn't mean that one causes the other. A classic example is the correlation between ice cream sales and drowning incidents. Both increase in the summer, but one doesn't cause the other. The underlying factor is the warm weather. Recognizing this fallacy is crucial to avoid drawing inaccurate conclusions. The ability to identify and analyze arguments is also essential. This involves breaking down complex arguments into their component parts, identifying the premises, the reasons given to support a conclusion, and evaluating whether the premises are valid and the reasoning is sound. We must examine the assumptions underlying arguments, questioning whether those assumptions are reasonable or justified. Furthermore, critical thinking necessitates a healthy degree of skepticism, but not outright cynicism. Skepticism involves questioning claims and demanding evidence, while cynicism dismisses everything outright. A healthy skepticism leads to a thorough investigation and thoughtful consideration, while cynicism acts as a barrier to productive engagement. This entails carefully assessing the credibility of sources, scrutinizing the evidence presented, and considering alternative explanations. Finally, critical thinking is not a solitary endeavor. It thrives in environments that foster open discussion, debate, and respectful disagreement. Engaging in dialogue with others who hold different perspectives is crucial in refining our own understanding and identifying potential weaknesses in our reasoning. By actively listening to others, considering their viewpoints, and engaging in constructive criticism, we can collectively enhance our critical thinking skills and arrive at more nuanced and informed conclusions. This collaborative approach to critical thinking allows us to leverage the collective intelligence of a community, ensuring that diverse viewpoints are considered and biases are mitigated. In conclusion, the capacity for critical thinking and healthy skepticism is paramount in navigating the complex information landscape of the modern world. It is a skill that requires diligent cultivation, constant practice, and a commitment to intellectual humility. By developing these skills, we equip ourselves not only to evaluate information more effectively, but also to make more reasoned decisions, engage in more productive dialogues, and ultimately contribute to a more informed and enlightened society. The search for truth and knowledge is a continuous process, and critical thinking provides the essential framework for this lifelong journey. Building upon the crucial skill of critical thinking, we now delve into the scientific method, a powerful tool in the pursuit of objective truth. The scientific method, far from being a rigid set of rules, is a dynamic process of inquiry, characterized by its emphasis on empirical evidence, testable hypotheses, and rigorous evaluation. Its core principle lies in systematically gathering and analyzing data to build a robust understanding of the natural world and, by extension, aspects of the human condition that lend themselves to empirical study. At its heart, the scientific method involves formulating a question or hypothesis based on observation or existing knowledge. This hypothesis, a tentative explanation for a phenomenon, must be testable, meaning it can be subjected to empirical investigation. This testing often involves designing experiments, carefully controlling variables to isolate the effects of the manipulated factor, and collecting quantifiable data. The data is then analyzed statistically to determine whether it supports or refutes the hypothesis. Crucially, the process isn't about proving the hypothesis right. Rather, it's about gathering evidence to either strengthen its support or reject it outright. A key element of scientific rigor is the willingness to revise or abandon a hypothesis in the face of contradictory evidence. One of the critical strengths of the scientific method lies in its inherent self-correcting nature. The peer review process, where research findings are scrutinized by other experts in the field before publication, acts as a safeguard against flawed methodology or biased interpretations. This rigorous evaluation ensures that only robust and well-supported findings enter the scientific literature, contributing to replication of studies. The independent reproduction of experiments by different researchers further enhances the reliability of scientific findings. Successful replication strengthens confidence in the validity of a result, while failures may reveal methodological weaknesses or inconsistencies that warrant Furthermore, the scientific method emphasizes objectivity. While complete objectivity may be an unattainable ideal, the scientific process strives to minimize bias through careful experimental design, rigorous data analysis, and transparent reporting. Researchers are encouraged to acknowledge potential sources of bias and take steps to mitigate their influence. This includes utilizing blinding techniques where researchers are unaware of the treatment conditions to prevent their expectations from influencing the results. Similarly, random assignment of participants to different groups helps to ensure that any observed differences are not due to pre-existing variations between the groups. However, it is crucial to acknowledge the limitations of the scientific method. While it excels at examining phenomena that are observable and measurable, it struggles with questions that are inherently subjective or value-laden. For instance, the scientific method may provide insights into the neural correlates of moral judgment, but it cannot definitively determine what constitutes moral behavior or establish a universally accepted moral code. Similarly, the scientific method may be unable to address questions related to personal meaning, the nature of consciousness, or the existence of God, as these phenomena may lie beyond the scope of empirical investigation. Another limitation lies in the potential for researcher bias to creep into the process, even with the safeguards mentioned previously. Confirmation bias, for instance, can lead researchers to selectively interpret data or design studies that are more likely to confirm their pre-existing beliefs. Furthermore, the complex interplay of variables in many real-world phenomena makes it challenging to isolate and control for all relevant factors, potentially leading to inaccurate conclusions. This is particularly true in areas like social science, where human behavior is influenced by a multitude of interacting factors. The inherent limitations of human observation must also be considered. Our senses are finite, and our perception of reality is shaped by our individual experiences and biases. The instruments we use to extend our observational capacities, such as microscopes or telescopes, also have inherent limitations. Technological advancements continually refine our observational tools, but the possibility of undetected biases or limitations always remains. Moreover, the interpretation of data is often not straightforward. Statistical analysis helps to quantify the relationship between variables, but it cannot necessarily reveal the underlying causal mechanisms. Correlation, as we have seen, does not imply causation. It's crucial to avoid jumping to conclusions based solely on statistical associations without considering alternative explanations or conducting further investigation to establish causal links. The scientific method is also subject to the influence of social and cultural factors. Funding priorities, societal values, and prevailing paradigms can shape the direction of research and potentially influence the interpretation of findings. The history of science is replete with examples of how prevailing beliefs have influenced the acceptance or rejection of new ideas. This highlights the importance of maintaining intellectual humility and continually questioning assumptions. Despite these limitations, the scientific method remains an indispensable tool for acquiring knowledge and understanding the world around us. Its emphasis on empirical evidence, testable hypotheses, and rigorous evaluation provides a framework for building a robust and self-correcting body of knowledge. While it may not provide answers to all questions, particularly those that lie beyond the realm of empirical investigation, it remains a vital approach for investigating the observable and measurable aspects of reality. By critically assessing its strengths and limitations, and by maintaining a healthy skepticism, we can effectively harness the power of the scientific method in our pursuit of objective truth. The ongoing refinement of the method through critical analysis and technological advances demonstrates its adaptability and ongoing relevance in the ever-evolving quest for knowledge. Furthermore, understanding the philosophical underpinnings of the scientific method is crucial to appreciate its strengths and limitations. The debate between empiricism and rationalism, for instance, highlights the tension between knowledge derived from sensory experience and knowledge derived from reason and logic. The scientific method, in practice, integrates elements of both, relying on empirical observation to generate hypotheses and utilizing logical reasoning to test and interpret the collected data. The ongoing debate surrounding the demarcation problem, the attempt to distinguish science from non-science further, underscores the complex philosophical dimensions of the scientific method. The criteria for defining a scientific discipline are not always clear-cut, and different approaches to scientific inquiry exist. The rise of interdisciplinary fields highlights the limitations of rigid classifications and suggests a more fluid and integrative approach to knowledge production. The quest for objectivity in scientific inquiry is also a matter of ongoing debate. While the scientific method aims to minimize bias, the inherent limitations of human observation and interpretation mean that complete objectivity is likely unattainable. The acknowledgement of this limitation, however, is a crucial element of scientific integrity. The transparency of methods and the rigorous peer review process are designed to mitigate the impact of bias, but they cannot eliminate it entirely. Finally, the application of the scientific method extends beyond the traditional scientific disciplines. The principles of formulating hypotheses, collecting data, and analyzing evidence can be applied to various fields, including social sciences, humanities, and even everyday life. By adopting a scientific mindset characterized by curiosity, skepticism, and a commitment to evidence-based reasoning, individuals can make more informed decisions and navigate the complexities of modern life more effectively. In conclusion, the scientific method, despite its limitations, provides a robust framework for acquiring knowledge and pursuing objective truth. By understanding its philosophical underpinnings, its strengths, and its limitations, we can harness its power more effectively in our ongoing quest for knowledge and understanding. The pursuit of truth is a continuous journey, and the scientific method serves as an essential tool on this path, constantly evolving and adapting to the challenges it faces. The integration of rigorous methodology with critical thinking and intellectual humility is paramount in ensuring the reliability and validity of scientific endeavors and their contribution to human knowledge. The relentless pursuit of truth and knowledge, as we've explored, requires more than just a mastery of critical thinking and the scientific method. It demands a fundamental shift in our mindset, a cultivation of intellectual virtues that allow us to navigate the complexities of information and differing viewpoints with grace and intellectual honesty. Central to this transformation are two interwoven qualities: open-mindedness and intellectual humility. Open-mindedness, at its core, is the willingness to consider perspectives that differ from our own, even those that challenge our deeply held beliefs. It's not a passive acceptance of all ideas, but an active engagement with them, a careful consideration of their merits and flaws. This requires a conscious effort to overcome ingrained biases, prejudices, and the comfort of cognitive consistency, the tendency to seek out and favor information that confirms our existing beliefs while dismissing information that contradicts them. The human brain, remarkably efficient in its pattern recognition, can inadvertently become a prisoner of its own shortcuts, leading us to reject information that challenges our established worldview. Overcoming this predisposition requires deliberate practice. One powerful technique is actively seeking out dissenting opinions. Instead of solely engaging with sources that reinforce our beliefs, we should deliberately expose ourselves to alternative viewpoints, even those that initially seem jarring or offensive. Reading books and articles that challenge our assumptions, listening to podcasts featuring perspectives we disagree with, and engaging in respectful dialogue with individuals holding opposing views are all crucial steps in cultivating open-mindedness. The goal is not to become perpetually undecided, but to engage critically with diverse perspectives to arrive at a more nuanced and well-informed understanding. The process of engaging with opposing viewpoints can be uncomfortable. Our initial reaction might be defensiveness, a refusal to consider the validity of opposing arguments. However, if we approach these encounters with a genuine desire to understand, rather than to win an argument, we can begin to see the value in alternative perspectives. Consider the debate surrounding climate change, for example. Individuals who deny the overwhelming scientific consensus often rely on information from sources that lack scientific rigor, or selectively highlight data that supports their position. Open-mindedness demands that we engage with this information critically, examining the methodology, evidence, and potential biases behind it, instead of simply dismissing it out of hand. This doesn't imply a need to accept every opposing viewpoint, but rather to understand its underlying rationale and identify its strengths and weaknesses. Furthermore, open-mindedness necessitates a willingness to revise or even abandon our beliefs in the face of compelling evidence. This is not a sign of weakness, but a hallmark of intellectual integrity. Holding steadfastly to beliefs that have been demonstrably refuted is a form of intellectual dishonesty. The history of science is replete with examples of theories once widely accepted that were later overturned by new discoveries and evidence. The geocentric model of the universe, the phlogiston theory of combustion, and the miasma theory of disease are just a few examples. In each instance, the scientific community's willingness to abandon outdated models in the face of overwhelming evidence was essential to the advancement of knowledge. This same willingness to reconsider our own beliefs, regardless of how deeply held they may be, is crucial in our own pursuit of truth. This brings us to the second essential virtue, intellectual humility. This is not about self-deprecation or a lack of confidence in one's abilities. Instead, it's about recognizing the limits of one's knowledge and the possibility of being wrong. It's about acknowledging that our understanding of the world is incomplete and subject to revision. Intellectual humility involves a willingness to admit when we don't know something, to acknowledge our biases, and to be open to learning from others. It involves a healthy skepticism, not just towards the claims of others, but also towards our own beliefs. Intellectual humility is particularly important in navigating the complexities of modern information. The internet, while a vast repository of knowledge, is also flooded with misinformation, biased reporting, and outright propaganda. The ability to critically evaluate information, to distinguish between reliable and unreliable sources, is crucial in today's world. Intellectual humility helps us approach information with a degree of caution and skepticism, preventing us from accepting everything we read. Moreover, intellectual humility fosters a collaborative approach to knowledge acquisition. By acknowledging the limitations of our own understanding, we become more receptive to the insights and perspectives of others. We are more likely to engage in constructive dialogue, to learn from our mistakes, and to build upon the collective wisdom of the community. This contrasts sharply with an arrogant or dogmatic approach, which tends to stifle intellectual growth and create divisions. Consider the field of medicine, where intellectual humility plays a critical role. Doctors, despite their extensive training and expertise, are constantly learning and refining their knowledge and practices. New research, clinical trials, and advancements in technology constantly challenge existing assumptions and treatment protocols. A willingness to acknowledge the limits of current understanding, to embrace new discoveries, and to adjust practices accordingly is essential for providing the best possible care for patients. The alternative, clinging to outdated practices based on outdated knowledge, would be a clear breach of intellectual humility and potentially endanger patients' health. Intellectual humility also extends beyond the realm of specialized knowledge. In our everyday lives, it's crucial to acknowledge our own fallibility and avoid making sweeping generalizations or judgments based on limited information. This often involves engaging in active listening, seeking clarification, and avoiding the temptation to immediately dismiss a view that contradicts our own. By practicing intellectual humility, we create space for understanding and empathy, which are essential for building strong relationships and resolving conflicts. The intertwined nature of open-mindedness and intellectual humility is evident. Open-mindedness provides the platform for encountering new ideas and perspectives, while intellectual humility provides the necessary self-awareness and willingness to revise our beliefs in light of these new encounters. Together, these virtues form a cornerstone for the pursuit of truth and knowledge. They foster a dynamic, self-correcting process of inquiry, allowing us to continually refine our understanding of the world and our place within it. Cultivating these intellectual virtues, therefore, isn't merely an intellectual exercise. It's a pathway to a more informed, compassionate, and meaningful life. The journey towards truth and knowledge is a lifelong pursuit, and these virtues serve as essential guides on that journey, enabling us to navigate the complexities of information and differing viewpoints with both intellectual integrity and a profound respect for the inherent limitations of human knowledge.